De mare.
Blessed Rising family, welcome, welcome. Good morning, bonjour, sabah al khair, salaam alaikum. Wherever you are in the world, please tell us where you're tuning in from, and thank you for taking the time to join us this morning as we discuss once again and remind ourselves what is right with Africa. This is a program as part of Africa Week 2020, and I'd like to take a moment to apologize for those of you who got disconnected from our live streaming yesterday. We had a playlist of Black Then, Black Now topics, videos, debates, documentaries, just connecting various aspects of our history, of discussions, our ancestors and leaders of our movements, fighters for our rights, warriors of our truths and justice for people of African descent throughout history to be played. Facebook unfortunately blocked that, though it may have something to do with the accessibility of certain countries to certain YouTube rights, perhaps. So I guess we will have to find another way to provide this invaluable content. Perhaps we will share these playlists with you that you may take the time to watch them, because if anything, the consistency of the inconsistency is astounding. How history repeats itself on both the good and the bad is, I don't feel like it's appreciated as much as it should be, because if history is repeating itself on the good, on the bad, then we are right now at a junction of some really, really, really revolutionary movements coming together. And I'd really like us to sit and reflect on what that means. What does us coming together look like? And for me, that's right now one of the most amazing things coming out of Africa. And again, to emphasize for those who weren't with us yesterday, when I say right with Africa, I don't mean just the geographic space. I mean Africa and her extension. Bear with me for a moment, please. And I'm back. Wherever you're tuning in from, family, please let me know who you are, who I'm speaking to or with. This is an open discussion. I will be sharing the links here. If you are interested in joining me, in telling me about something you feel is right with Africa that we don't know about, you feel is right with Africans, that you feel, you know, the world needs to know that people of African ancestry are really rising. People, our people, before anything and anyone else, our people need to know what our people are doing, because there is pure magic, there is pure greatness coming out of each and every one of us, whether we realize it or not. You know, I have such amazing human beings in my circle who really think they don't have that much of an impact, but the work they are doing is invaluable. And as long as we are not acknowledging our value, as long as we are not recognizing what we bring to the table, we will keep not being welcome to the table. We will keep being told to stay at the end, at the edge of that table. I'm hoping this is one of the workshops that we will be adding, because now we have to add more content, because we can't live stream all these playlists that we had arranged for. So perhaps that's one of the things we'll look into. But in the meantime, please tell me, where are you logging in from? Where are you tuning in from? And here is the link for you to join. Let's share some positivity with our people. Let's tell them, and let's tell one another what's right with Africa. What good news can we share? Who connected with whom? What great invention came out? Are we really truly lacking in the sense that we have been portrayed and continue to be portrayed on various media? What's right with Africa for you, and what does Africa Rising mean to you? For our family watching in, dropping in this morning, Hashim Shadan. Hashim, please join. Come in and tell us what's right. I dropped the link, I put the link in there, click on it. Let's have a conversation. I tell you in the meantime, a bit of a recap from yesterday. And for me, seeing the way we interact with one another, seeing our excitement in coming together for this reunion is a big part of what's right with Africa right now, is that there is a thirst and a hunger and this inexplicable urge to connect, to come together. Right now, more than any other time, I don't know if it's COVID, I don't know if it's this quarantine madness, I don't know if it's the unrest that's generally happening around the world right now, but there is this urge for us as a people of African ancestry to come together. And yesterday we saw that in so many different ways. For me, the panel for incarceration, as heavy as it was to listen to these truths, Sabah al-Noor, Sabah al-Noor, Sabah al-Hurriya, Mazen Ilyas. Bro, join, tune in, tell us what's right with Africa. Mazen is a returning Africa Week 2020 family member. He was there from the very, very start, from our inaugural Africa Week 2020 in May. And he was also, if I'm going to put my Nubia Initiative hat here for a second, he is our first Ubuntu Fellow. Now, we'll talk about the Ubuntu Fellowship in a little bit, but I'm hoping Mazen will feel encouraged to join and tell us a little bit of what's right with Africa, because yesterday, well, not yesterday, last week, oh, it feels like yesterday. Last week, Mazen and I were working on Nubia Fest with some fantastic scholars on Nubia. And let me tell you, there were a lot of things right with Africa coming out of that reunion, that gathering, that festival and celebration of African heritage and African Heritage Month. Young Africans like Mazen, who will take whatever is thrown at them and create something absolutely beautiful and turn the most hideous form of ignorance into a beacon of light, into education, into something that would impact and ripple well beyond that our own personal bubbles. I'm hoping he'll log on and tell you more. Is it? Oh, he's saying the link was wrong. Of course, the link was wrong. Naturally, the link was wrong. Voila. Thank you, Mazen. Add your voice. All right. Let's see here. What is right with Africa? What is right with Africa? Madagascar's vanilla farmers are being inspired to plant trees by a gecko. How about that? This is an article from positive.news. Vanilla has brought prosperity to farmers in Madagascar, but often at the cost of its forest. Now rewilding efforts and an unobtrusive gecko are restoring woodland and helping vanilla plants to thrive. Yes, Mazen, we're right with Africa. We are absolutely right with Africa. Okay, I sent the correct. I thought that. I figured the Nubian nerd is going to figure that out. Here is some positive news coming out of and to the continent. Family, join us. Tell us, do you have some good news for us to share with one another, to share what's right with Africa, what's good with Africa? How are we educating one another? How are we breaking the cycle? How are we shifting the paradigms of our narratives being told? And yesterday at the family hour, Alexandra and I were talking about labels and this rejection of labeling and what labeling actually can do, whether it's in terms of growth. Yes, you have good news. Okay, Mazen, I sent the link. Did you not receive it? Here, I send it again. Two sets of good news. Okay. Yes, we want that good news. Okay, let me see. I will send it to your messenger. All welcome, all invited. Yes, that was the first one. I now just sent another one. Try that. I also sent it to your message. Viola Green, Amos Wilson, read his work. There we are. Mazen.
Hey, Sabah al Khair, how are you?
Good. I am good. A little panicked about how we will manage running the evening session. Although I'm thinking it's just going to be an open co-working space.
Let me know. I'm ready to help.
You always are. That's why I say you're what's good with Africa. And so I agree with you. We're what's good with Africa. Tell us the good news, Mazen.
Well, two sets of good news, actually.
Okay, we'll take it.
Okay, the first set of good news is that now there are people on the continent who are reclaiming their narrative, as you saw with last week with Nubia Fest 2020.
Yes.
We definitely did an amazing job with that, and I think the inspiration for that definitely comes from Africa Week 2020, because the theme for Africa Week is reclaiming your narrative, reclaiming your heritage, telling your own story, and so. Last week, for the first time ever, we got to hear from Nubians and non-Nubians alike, and lovers of Nubia about Nubia. It wasn't somebody else telling us about it. It wasn't a state-sponsored organization or whatever it is telling us about it. It was us talking about us, which was awesome. That was beautiful. That was wonderful. It's amazing.
More of that.
That was definitely amazing. And then the second set of good news is people are going up and down my DMs telling me about Africa Week 2020, and they're like, "Yo, we know Nubia Fest was awesome, but like Africa 2020 is lit right now. Like these are the panels you should be tuning into. This is I've got like so many DMs with the schedule."
Yes.
People have been DMing me the schedule, and they're like, "Yo, the panel from this morning," and they talked about the incarceration panel. Actually, I'm a little upset that I missed that. I was at the dentist, but they were telling me about the incarceration panel, and I have to go back and rewatch it.
You have to. You really have to.
Yes.
Wait, so people who are not part of Africa Week 2020 before?
No, yeah, it's people who followed Africa Week 2020 from June or from May or when I don't even remember when we did it now. And just people on Twitter who followed Nubia Fest, and then were like, oh, there's another project coming along, which is Africa Week 2020, and now they're following that. I'm like, it's amazing.
That's amazing. That's amazing news. Thank you,
so I definitely wanted to let you guys know that, let you folks know that, because I know training, putting on something like this is. So I hope that's a little a little fuel to your gas tank to.
It really is. It is. This is exactly why we do what we do. This feeling of coming together. And yesterday, actually, another thing that's very, very right with Africa is how we are now comfortable. The dynamics of our relationship, even with our parents, is shifting. So yesterday we called on the family. Actually, we've been calling on the family, and we continue to call on the family. So if you're tuned in, please recommend people you feel their work needs to be featured. If you feel they have something to teach us, to teach our family, please recommend them. Yesterday, brother Joey Zarda got in touch and said, this woman is doing great, does great work. Her work really needs to be taught. She's essentially a bobbin and a needle warrior, wielding that needle. And it's something that we haven't had on Africa Week 2020 before. But even if we did, and there's someone else who's doing it. But the point is, we reached out and I was like, okay, that's great. Yeah, we want that, please. It's like, oh, but maybe a little bit shy. I was like, okay, let's try. Let's try and have this conversation. And it worked out. And mark your calendars, because that wonderful woman, that queen, will be joining us on Friday, talking about just tales and her journey with bobbin lace and her work. She was actually in what is it called, the Mandela Museum, with her work, which also got featured at Miss Universe pageant. So yeah, it's amazing. And then later to find out that it was his mother. I was like, Joey, So I'm speaking to this wonderful human being. I was like, oh, sister, this. And I'm just like, and then she's like, oh, we moved and Joey was this old or this young. And it's like, hang on, which Joey are we talking about?
There's another Joey, right?
The one who connected us. And it's like,
oh, he didn't tell you that.
oh my God. And then I meet his sister, and I swear to you, this is what I love about Africa Week 2020 is like, I really felt like I was meeting my sister. I never met Joey in my life. I'm just connected to his mom right now. And then his sister comes along, and guess what? His sister is another artist, and she makes hats and clutches and this, this great creativity. And I'm like,
Wow.
we need more of that. So please, if you're tuned in and a friend of yours or a family member does amazing work that should be featured, that you feel could use the encouragement, could use the push, or should use this push, or whatever it is, and you don't know how to convince them to get on, get in touch with us. Let us give it a try. Let us invite them. Let us show that this is really, it's nothing formal. This isn't a speech being given at an institution somewhere. This isn't a speech given at an organization. So this isn't a lecture.
Hold on. This is an institution, though. Africa Week 2020 is an institution. So, but it's not the kind of institution where gatekeepers exist. That's what you mean. But I don't know who us is.
We reject labels.
I don't know who us is. Dima is pretty convincing. I told everybody what happened with Nubia Fest. Like, I don't know who the us is. I'm not a very convincing person at all. Dima is.
You're a very convincing person, Mazin.
I'm not convincing. I'm just like, listen, okay, this is what it is, and then people tell me either yes or no, and I'm like, okay. Then I go back to Dima, and I'm like, this is what this person said, and she's like, okay, let me try. Then we come back with a yes. So Dima's the convincing one. I don't know who the us and can let us try is. Us is Dima.
Let us as a family try it. Tara, welcome, sister. Please join the conversation. Tell us what you think is right with Africa. Tara is another returning, loving, and Viola, who is dropping this knowledge and these articles. Netflix. I so wish we could share some of these, Viola. Good people, here is the link. Join the conversation, add your voice. We are here for another 40 minutes before a very exciting conversation, a very important conversation on Black men, mentoring, and mental health.
Oh, man. I wonder who's on that panel.
One, who are you calling man?
Oh, man, as in general. Like, not
as in general. Yeah. No, I'm with you. I follow.
Not I. Actually, you know what's funny about that? In our group chat, Alexandros was like, "Hey guys," and then he stops. He types, "Hey guys," he enters it, and then he's like, "Wait, folks."
This is another thing that's right with Africa. Women are again back to making men stop and think.
Vincent had to tell me, he's like, Dima's not in this chat, so it's okay to use guys. We're
guys. Find Vincent and I will have a conversation with him, because just because I'm not present in that conversation doesn't mean to go back to guys. Come on.
Hey guys. Yeah, but I definitely need to go back to that incarceration panel. I think that's really important, not just here, but just all over the world. I think Viola was talking about it. I believe she said economic oppression, all of this is so tied together, and this is just it's understanding just the economics of things will help you understand why incarceration rates are the way that they are, whether here in the US or elsewhere, and just everything that's going on with that. So I encourage everyone to go take a look at that. I haven't watched it, so that's going to definitely be on my to-do list for today.
I haven't, but what I did see was an episode. There was I think it's a series called The Drug Business or something. And it's the process of basically why it's a business and why certain things are decriminalized vis-a-vis others, and the timing of when things were decriminalized. And it's when these dots are connected very clearly in front of you, you cannot argue that it's anything other than this structured racism, which is why we say it's the entire system that needs to go. Like, it can't be bits and pieces. And this now conversation about, yes, but the way to change that is voting. But even the voting system is
messed up. Yeah.
The voting system is telling us that this particular thing isn't how it works. Tara, I'm with you on the folks thing, and I fully support this. Can we find another gender neutral word? I fully support that. I don't know where we can go with it though.
Yeah, English is a very limited language, which is very unfortunate. I think I was talking about that yesterday on Twitter, where I was saying, like, there's a lot wrong with the English language, and there's a lot of, like, weird things that exist in it. So yeah, I guess people, but using people in a sentence is very, like, difficult, or using it properly. Like, hey people, that's a little, I don't know. Or hey y'all. I don't know if y'all works, or if that's, like, really, I don't know. But Tara, I'm open to hearing any suggestions that you have. Because this is actually something that's been on my mind a lot. So, and
well, it better be after all the conversations we had.
Yeah, after all folks and guys and yeah. So any suggestions that you have, Tara, I'm more than for it. The link for the incarceration panel, I'm gonna find it for you.
I found it. I'm gonna post it right now, and already it is our most popular panel thus far. It has been shared 31 times since yesterday. I'm trying to see how many views it got, just so I can share. And I also think that this 518 views. Since yesterday, and that's just on our Facebook channel. Please let me know if that link worked. But here is what I'm saying is being able to openly speak about this pain, openly speak about this injustice, and reclaiming and reframing what these experiences mean to us and to our moving forward was really, 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 I mean, it was heavy, but it was extremely powerful. It was extremely inspirational to see how a simple shift in what you choose and how you choose to perceive and react to a grave injustice that's been done to you.
Are you talking about incarceration, or are you talking about? Oh,
no, I'm talking specifically about how these brothers reacted to their interaction. Well, not interactions. Their incarcerations or their experiences with police and police brutality.
I honestly wish I had known about that panel a little earlier, because I would have spoken about it also. Or and people, people think, like, when we talk about incarceration, it's just like, oh, especially people in the diaspora. I find that a lot of diasporans don't quite understand the system. They'll say things like, well, this group of people is inherently violent, so therefore they deserve to get locked up. And it's like, okay, well, let's talk about what inherently violent means and why inherent violence is attributed to this group of people, and so and then when you kind of begin to break down the system for them, they're like, oh snaps, and then they're like, why does this exist? And then you begin to kind of go back into history, which is also really important. I think we need to acknowledge the history of some places, such as South Africa, and the history of other places like the US itself, that'll tell you. And this is, again, me speaking as Mazen, not as TNI affiliate or, anything of that nature. But hey, TNI is non-political, and this conversation got just a little political. So therefore, I have to make sure I was taking off the right hat and putting on the right one.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. But yeah, we need to understand, like, even now with the conversation of legalizing marijuana, I think that's such an important place to have this conversation of incarceration in the system, because white people are making money off of marijuana, but black men are in prison for it. It doesn't make sense. And you have to think about how it is that you can uh, you know give reparations to these people. And I use the word reparations intentionally. These people have been locked up since the time of whichever president, and they've lost things like family members. You can't get back family members, family members who've died. You can't get back time that you've lost with family, whether your kids or your wife or whoever it is. You don't get that back. So even just giving people money for it doesn't is not enough. It doesn't fill that gap and the gap of those things. And so even now, in the conversation of legalizing marijuana here in the US, that's another, the topic of incarceration comes back. Just yesterday, we saw on the news here in the U.S. that they said that, certain places are going to be called anarchist jurisdictions. Why? Because people are protesting against police brutality. And so there's a lot of, there's that conversation is so timely and so important in a lot of different places in the world.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I completely agree with that. And we, how that conversation go, like, and this is part of what I was talking about in that documentary about the business, the drug business itself. And that it just got to a point. This is why the legalization has shifted and it's become so timely, is because it got to a point where everyone was smoking, everyone was consuming that, and so you cannot even, if we're talking like strictly about race, more white people were smoking than black people, and if you're not you can't arrest all these people, so you need to find a way to make it okay for them to smoke, okay for them, and this is now moving into other heavier drugs.
Yeah. And it's actually me as an epidemiologist, talking about drugs, and why. Now we're finding that, in epidemiology, we're finding that, so for people who don't know what epidemiology is, it's the study of drugs, right? And it's the study of how drugs affect people. It's a whole field in which we take like data regarding how many people have died and all this other stuff. And unfortunately for me, I also happen to be an infectious disease epidemiologist, which has just worked out perfectly over the last 5 months. But here's the thing: in epidemiology, we're finding that, like, now, we're no longer referring to, people who use drugs as junkies or all these things. We're now referring to drugs as an addiction, and that's a change. Like, the change in narrative and the change in word choice changes the narrative itself, and that's something that I also learned in one of my other classes, which is like, the way that we use words gives off certain meanings. And so the example of that, or the best example that I can give so everybody can kind of follow what I'm saying, is when we say somebody is pro-life, right? The negation of that, the opposite of that would be what? Pro-death. So that's such a interesting label that people use, and so and it takes a little bit for you, like, it's a subconscious thing. It takes a little bit for you to kind of really think about it. But now that we're referring to, we're referring to drugs, and people who use drugs as no longer junkies, or all these terrible labels that we used to use, we now call them addicts. And an addiction is something you have no control over, and it's something that you need help with. Why is that happening? We found that label, the change in the way that we describe these people, has coincided with the rise of white people using more drugs. And so now it's actually now labeled a public health crisis. And so, even that is strange, and how this influences medicine itself, and it influences healthcare, and influences these types of fields. But yeah, it's there's a lot there. There's a lot, and it intertwines with a bunch of different, subjects, and it's an octopus that has its arms in a couple of different places, as you mentioned.
And you said it also, because I know from just my work with you, that you're also seeing not just in how it's affecting race, but also how it's affecting gender.
Yeah, gender as gender as well. And that's a really interesting, conversation, and a really interesting topic, because oftentimes we don't think of things in terms of gender. We don't think of public health crises in terms of gender, with the exception of really one topic, which is, maternal mortality, because the numbers there are so stark, and there's no way to kind of get around that one. That's the elephant in the room. There's no way to not address that elephant in the room. But yeah, drugs, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. And incarceration, due to drugs, are everywhere. And gender rates and differences in incarceration are also, there's just that topic is just so heavy, and there's a lot in it, and so that's definitely, again, a panel that I recommend everybody continue to watch, and I have to go see myself and just see, what's in there as well.
Right. Now, really quick, Mazen, since I have you here and we are talking about coming together and what's right with Africa, one of the things we are very excited in doing when we first started Africa Week 2020 is the Ubuntu Fellowship.
Mm-hmm.
And Mazen is not at all prepared for this conversation. He doesn't know that I'm throwing this at him. And we already know that this is a safe space. So you can say whatever you want, because,
okay.
Because you still haven't given me your address, so I can't really find you in that sense just yet. But Mazen, tell us, why is something... Okay, first of all, what is your experience with the Ubuntu Fellowship thus far?
Okay. So the Ubuntu Fellowship, for those of you who don't know what it is, it was started back. When did Africa Week happen? In May?
Yeah, it was actually started for Africa Day, and then we decided we're not going to celebrate Africa just for one day. Every day is Africa Day.
Gotcha.
But for sustainability, we just made it the week.
Okay. So the idea of the Ubuntu Fellow came about in May, or that's when I found out about the Ubuntu Fellowship. Let me say that instead. The idea was probably in the works. It was cooking in Dima's head for a while, but I found out about it in May, and basically the idea is that you learn, but you also teach. And so what I mean by that is that anybody can get an Ubuntu Fellow. Any of the presenters or anybody can volunteer to be an Ubuntu mentor, and you get an Ubuntu Fellow. And the whole purpose of it is that you basically take on apprentice. It's kind of like the guild apprentice model, to really simplify it. And then the apprentice goes on and becomes a master, and they take on more apprentices, and so on and so forth. So it's sustainable knowledge passing. That's what it is. And so I serve currently as an Ubuntu Fellow for the TNI, the Nubia Initiative, and for I Will Coaching with Abdel Wahab.
Yes.
And I think, those experiences have been very important to my growth, especially over the past couple of months. Abdel Wahab
stunted it. Huh? You mean we stunted the growth?
No, they actually, you didn't stunt it. I was in the process of stunting my own growth, and you guys saved me from that.
Wow, Mazen.
Yeah, I was definitely going, like, just thinking back to a couple of months ago, I would have stunted my own growth with what it was that I had planned and what it was that I was gonna do, and you guys were like, "Whoa, chill." Abdul Wahab and you were like, "Wait a minute, okay, let's take a step back and think about it."
But Mazen, mashallah, you already have you've done so much already in terms of bringing up people, bringing what you know and what you do to our people. For someone your age, mashallah, you've already achieved and accomplished a lot.
Mazen accomplished anything. Stop it.
Oh no, but you have. No. This is exactly what, you know what? Thank you. Now I know I really need to hold that session. I really need to hold that workshop of knowing your value, really understanding your value. And this is something I struggle with. I struggle with this always, in knowing that, yeah, okay, I know what I'm doing matters, but is it mattering at the stage that everyone is saying it is? Does it matter what everyone is saying? Why am I hesitant in claiming this part of what I'm doing? And I think that's one of the encouraging things that I'm seeing from between circles, our networks, especially within Africa Week 2020 family, is more people are stepping into their power and more people are getting comfortable saying, no, this is what I'm bringing to the table. I know what I bring to the table. I know my value. I know how I'm doing this and why I'm doing this, and no one can tell me otherwise. We're seeing more of us come through and teach classes and create courses that initially started as conversations. And that it was one of the things that I was thinking about, and I really wish I had more time or more space between Nubia Fest and Africa Week 2020, as opposed to the, like 24 hours slither that we had. But one of the things I really wanted to open to the family and ask the family to help me with is for me to figure out, okay, what is it? Because people keep telling me, oh, you need to teach what you know, and I was like, okay, I don't know I don't know where to start with that. And so one of the things that I'm now designing for the many hours that we have for content to fill in later at night is co-creating what would a course like that look like? What would lessons like that? Viola is here saying, this is the greatness of Black women. Our cells were stolen for cancer research. The world overused these cells from this African woman as the basis of all research and worldwide.
She's talking about Henrietta Lacks. Yeah. And so for those of you who don't know who she is, Henrietta Lacks was this woman who had, she's a Black woman who had cancer, and they found that her cells were killing the cancer cells. But not only were they killing the cancer cells, they were reproducing at a massive rate as well. And so her cells were essentially immortal, because cells have a specific lifetime, and then they die afterwards, but her cells were reproducing faster than they were dying. So she was producing more cells constantly. And so they took her, scientists took her cells without her, permission, and continued to do testing and research on them. And the cells are still somewhere out there in the world. And actually her family, I think, sued maybe 2 or 3 years ago to get the cells back and to get rights for Henrietta Lacks. And that's actually where a lot of pharmaceutical drugs have come from, and using her cells for it. It's an insane story. Definitely, please look into that. Like, that's a crazy story.
There was a film made about that, I think.
There's a book made about it. The book is titled "The Immortal Cells of Henrietta Lacks." I'm not sure if there was a movie made about it, but I definitely know
the movie was or is in the making of it. Let me find the book so I can drop the link. You said Immortal? The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks there. Mm-hmm. Oh, it's on Audible as well.
Oh, awesome. So they make it accessible.
Yeah.
Viola, thank you for the correction. Viola has stated that her family has never been compensated to this day, which is, can you imagine that? Can you imagine you have been essentially the the entity that has kept people from dying, and the entity which has kept the pharmaceutical business going, and your family has not been? What?
What do you mean? Can I imagine that this is the story of all people of African ancestry?
Yeah, but it's just
everything of any form of everything and anything of that kind of impact was built on the backs of people from Africa.
Yeah.
People of African ancestry. So of course I believe that. My question is, how long will that continue to happen before we realize that it's time to close ranks?
I think, there's I personally, I'm sorry to the family out there. I don't think that'll ever happen. The reason why that'll never happen, the reason why we'll never close ranks, is because there's a lot of politics in between us. There's a lot of actual legitimate issues in between us. And, legitimate issues meaning like resources that people, I don't really know how to explain this idea, but like, there's enough of Africa and there's enough of resources in Africa for all of us. All of Africa's kids, both home and abroad, to function and to sustain ourselves. But as humans, we have this thing in us, this greed in us that makes us just want to hoard things, and then want to gain material as a result of it. So unless we figure out a way in which we can truly come together and essentially the true meaning of Ubuntu, I am because we are, then I don't think we will ever get to that point, you know, and understanding that, like, yes, there's a border between, you know, Sudan and Egypt, but, you know, that border is artificial. Or there's a border between Ethiopia and Sudan. That border doesn't really exist, you know, because at the end of the day, we're all people, you know, we're all humans, and we all bleed the same, and we all, you know, go through the same cycle of grief, of love, of, you know, sadness, of happiness, of all these things. And until that realization really pops into people's head, and that realization actually like matures, then I you know, I'm very I don't, you know, and people actually, and I guess the embodiment of this is, I call everybody that I meet who's a male brother, and everybody who I meet who's a woman sister, you know. And people are confused by that. People have been confused by it for a very long time. Like, why are you calling people you don't know brother? Like, because at the end of the day, that's my brother, you know. And at the end of the day, that's my sister. And so I try, you know, like I try to practice what I preach as well in that regard. But actually, that gets us back to Ubuntu, the Ubuntu Fellowship. The theory of scarcity is a principle of colonialism. We are children of the sun. We believe in abundance. Yes, that is true. There is more than enough for all of us. The sun can shine on everybody without taking away from anybody's light. I concur 100%.
It all goes back again. We've had this conversation time and time again. This traumatization that we have experienced, that we continue to experience, this traumatization into survival mode. Sorry, it's some incense here. This sense of competition that been from, although we are trying to focus on what's right and what's positive to start on the right note, but this is and I feel like this is also shifting, which in a way it's one of the right things that's one of the things that's right with Africa, is that now there is less of a need of this competition. There is less of a need to reinvent the wheel. And I'm not saying it's completely gone, because it still very much is there. You still reach out to organizations, or you reach out to scholars. And this is something we've experienced with Nubia Fest, is like, you reach out to a scholar, you say, you know, can you come and share your knowledge? And it's a bit disheartening to find the hesitation or the pause coming from our brothers or our sisters before coming from non-African scholars, or scholars not of African descent, to say, okay, but yeah, what am I getting out of this? And it's not to say we need to do things for free, but right now we are entering a phase where we need to be okay to do things for free for one another. Or we need to be okay to find a way where the burden of doing something for one another is not just on one person. Like, producing something like Africa Week 2020 at the magnitude that we envision it to be, at the energy, at the level of energy that we want it to be, like when we first started it, how I envisioned it when I first pictured, okay, we're gonna have this 24/7 affair, that everyone thought I was completely crazy. Like, what do you mean you're gonna have 5 days of that? Because initially it was 5 days. It happened to extend for the 6th day, which is amazing because more people started showing up. That for that to be sustainable, it needs to be a group effort. We need to have people really show up and really say, you know, you don't need to do that. You don't need to stay up, because right now we have what, like, I'm gonna be sitting right here from 7 until 2. Actually, well, today a bit longer, but this is how we've had it divided. 6 hours myself, 6 hours Alexandra, and then we were going to come together for like the family hour, and then we're gonna have that playlist. But
hello, we can now make that, you know, we can cut that down. I'm here.
You're here for it. But that's the thing. We need more people to come in. We need our brothers and our sisters from the continent to also join and say, you know what? And we have a streaming partnership, a call for streaming partners. You know, if you'd like to use this platform to shed light to the work you are doing, and we're in alignment with our vision, and it's all spreading positive news, spreading news that we need to know about, then let's do it. You know, it shouldn't just be on one. Even we're in the same time frame, Mazen. We may not be in the same state, but we're in the same time frame. We're gonna need to rest. But I'm looking at again how we started and why we started Africa Week 2020, and it was to encourage the effort of working with what we have. Yesterday, Jose or JB, who tuned in from the Netherlands, was saying, you know, Africans built skyscrapers with sticks and stones, and really just what they have. And he was saying, you know, can you imagine what they would build if they had the right equipment, if they had the right tools? Right now, this is what we have, and so we're gonna work with that. And I've been needing to just like sit and produce the work I need to be producing. I need to sit and design the courses that people keep telling me they want me to teach. And I'm just like, I need to edit that chapter for my monograph from my PhD, you know, and I think that's what we're going to do.
Perfect.
I'm providing that, and everyone is welcome to tune in. It can be a virtual co-working space. Everyone work on what they need to work on, and every now and then we'll take a break and talk and have coffee. Here we have Viola.
I actually also end up teaching a course as well. Boom.
Please, can you bring your nerdy Nubian, nerdy Nubianness in?
Yes, I will. I may absolutely end up teaching a course. You know, a lot of people have been asking me about, you know, my first master's, public policy and law with a concentration in health policy, how to really look at and write policy briefs. I don't have a problem teaching people how to write policy briefs. You know, that's a very important thing. And, you know, especially when, you know, we have to, one of the ways in which we have to break down a system is to unfortunately use a system. I will teach people how to, you know, write to their legislators, how to, you know, argue points and those things. So maybe that'll be one of the deliverables that I end up producing.
Yes. Okay. I like the sound of that. I am just opening up the other studio so that I see the brothers tune in, because we have 8 more minutes. And in those 8 minutes, family, wherever, Viola has a comment.
Oh, yes. So Viola says AFCFTA, free trade agreement holds promise, but the power of intercontinental trade and support will occur when we monetize our resources. Absolutely. That our currencies are backed by wealth in our ground. That's really important. That's why the West is eager to get rid of COVID, because Africa is now producing instead of importing.
Viola.
I'm gonna end up leaving so I can
just go ahead.
That panel.
Prepare for the next one. Mazen will be on the next panel. If you didn't get our hints earlier, please tune in. At the end of this one, refresh the page. Thank you, Mazen, for joining. Thank you for this amazing confirmation and affirmation that our work is reaching people. Keep telling those people who are flooding your DM to come through, to propose sessions, to have conversations, even if they're just informal conversations. Thank you so much for sharing.
Absolutely.
Right. Thank you.
I'll see everybody in a little bit.
See you on the other side. Yeah, Viola, this is what happens when we really, being grounded has different angles, right? And being connected to the ground in that way, again, this was one of the discussions, and this is one of the points that Cedric made so strongly in the panel we had. What was it? Was it Juneteenth? The Juneteenth event, we had a panel on reclaiming the land and connecting to our roots, and farming as a form of freedom fighting. So freedom fighting farmers, if you will. And understanding that connection, understanding that link that we have, and what we can do to work with what we have, is really, really important. So thank you. And thank you for all these links that you dropped. For those of you who are tuning in from Twitter, the links that we have are not coming through. The links that we have are not coming through on your screens on Twitter. So go to our Facebook page, Africa Week 2020, And you will see the links to that Viola very kindly put in there, as whether they're books or documentaries or films from YouTube. What we will do also is share the playlists that we had put together on our YouTube channel that we were hoping to stream, that essentially show the continuity of this struggle and the continuity of the systematic and deliberate structured racism that we continue to face, and how we can learn from mistakes of the past and the lessons that continue to be unlearned. How can we learn from them and implement them in a way that really bring us together and develop a sustainable path forward for our people? On that note, I thank you, and please tune in tomorrow for another session, another discussion, another open discussion of what's right with Africa. Thank you so much. Afialogo.